Hello and welcome to another Stata video. My name is Stefan Eriksson and today we're going to be taking a look at 3 different ways to create and use dummy variables in Stata. This of course will only be an introduction, but it should put you well on your way to conduct your own nice analysis using Stata. So first of all, I'll be loading in a dataset, just auto. So I'm going to use my do file that I already prepared here a little bit. You can always pause the video and just take a look how it actually works. But for now, I'm just using one of the example datasets within Stata, auto. Suppose now, looking at the dataset, I want to generate first a variable that takes on, say, the value 1 if the price is so-called high, right? So what we could just, for instance, do here, say, if I look at this here, suppose now I put a variable that is 1 if the price is above, say, 6,000 and 0 otherwise. So doing so, I will do it the following way. So first using generate, that's option number 1. Generate high underscore price, that's just the name we give it. We first put it to a string of zeros. Then we can replace high price equal to 1 if the high price, or in this case the price, is above 6,000. This here would first generate a variable full of zeros. It will then replace it all with ones if the price is above this 6,000. We can of course just take a look at it here, and you see here we now have a nice variable here at the end of the data set that takes on 1 if the price is above 6,000 and 0 otherwise. So that will be version number 1. However, there's a few more things we should take into account here, because what if there's missing values in this here? Because then this will act a little differently, because the way Stata actually treats missing values. So to get around this problem in the first place, we can simply just say, well, first of all, we're going to just drop this variable again, because we're going to recreate it again. So I'm just going to drop it first, and we can always just run it. Could have just typed this in directly, but now you can also see what I'm doing. And then of course we generate it yet again. And we can of course just do this in the following way. So I can do the following here. I could start off with the same, but now I can of course also just say replace high price equal to a missing value, which is denoted by a dot, if missing in this case here of price. You can of course replace this with any variable that you have in your case here, and it will put a dot for a missing value. Sure, this is, some would call this inefficient coding, so of course there's a shorter way of doing it. I could just generate high price in one line now and say, okay, put a parenthesis here and say if price is above 6,000. And then of course you can put in if not missing, because status not to in Boolean language is an exclamation point. This here would generate everything in one line, taking into account this missing values issue. So here again, just to take a look at it, we now again have a dummy here for 1 if the price is higher than 6,000 and 0 otherwise. Not so bad. So let's go and drop this variable again, because this here would finish off number 1. So this here is the first way of doing it. So now we've done it just using generate. Now, the second one is short and to the point. So in this case here, suppose you have a variable in a dataset that is somewhat categorical. Let's just say categorical. Rep78 is a categorical variable here that takes on the value from 1 till 5 in this dataset. You can also see it has missing values, so here it becomes really interesting, right? So you can of course just do the same way as I did before here, but now we can also just look at this here to use tap using tabulate. So normally we would just tabulate a variable here. So tab rep78. You see that there's 5 values here, 1 till 5. But now I can also, while using tab, automatically generate a variable for each one of these 5 instead of having to do it one by one. So I can simply just write tab, short for tabulate of course, rep78, and then comma, and then we use a gen option here, and then we simply just give it a name. We can just call it rep underscore group. Then it would now generate a total of 5 variables, rep group 1, rep group 2, rep group up till 5. Each of them would represent a dummy for each of these 5 levels. So let's try it out. Okay, it will of course show the tabulation again, just like before, but now if I open here, you see not only do I have my high price from earlier, but I have all the rep groups here, 1 through 5. You see missing values are just carried over, as it should be, right? If there's missing in the original variable, it'll also be missing over in the dummies. So now you see you have 5 dummies, Well, one for each of these groups. Well, that's nice. And that one I really find to be one of the most useful commands in Stata when you have to especially make, say, country dummies for a lot of countries or a lot of firms. This really, really makes it fast. So now comes the final way of doing it, and which one I actually find really nice. Because you can also just, when you want to summarize rep 78, you see I just make a summary of this here. We can already now make a summary for each of the 5 using a factor notation in Stata, the I dot command. Gonna be you probably make another video using these I dot functions, but now we're just gonna use it for creating dummies. So I can of course just say sum rep 78, but now instead of just doing this, I put an I in front of it, I dot. So you see here now I get it for each of the 5 groups. Of course, there's each 69 observations because, well, there's 0, 1 dummies respectively, but now you get the means for each of the groups, which is really, really nice. Of course, this I dot notation becomes really valuable in regression, so let me just take a look at this in a regression. So you can, of course, say we want to regress a price from this data set. That's our dependent variable. And we're going to just do it on I dot rep 78. Notice here, I did not have to generate all the dummies first. It will automatically do that in my regression call. So now when I run this regression, you see I have a reference group, so a base value of 1, that's the reference group, and you have a dummy for each of the 4 others. I could, of course, put in all dummies, but then I'll fall into the dummy trap. In that case, I would have to remove the constant using the no con option. But of course, then the reference and the interpretation does change. I did cover this in lecture 3 of one of my recent methods courses, so if you're interested, you can always go and take a look at that. There I actually also explain why that is the case, and also look at different types of dummy variables. But here, let's continue a little bit, because suppose now that you want to have a different reference group. You can of course just use reg price again, but now we want to simply change the reference group, and you can do that by 5.rep78, because now we're changing the reference group to become 5 instead. So you see here, now I just got 1 dummy here for 5 otherwise. Actually, I was a little wrong because now I just used 1 dummy here, and maybe I just messed up a few things, but you know what, that just happens. I could also just make it a little different here. So this just includes 1 dummy. Sorry for saying reference group, because the way we do it is simply just doing it the following way. Instead, we say IB. I comes from earlier from the I dot reference again. But now we say base 5, B for base group, and 5 for which variable or which number we want as the base group. So see, now I ran the regression again, and now we see that 5 is gone, because that's now the reference group. Likewise, I can just go in and actually just change my reference group to say 3, if for whatever reason you want to do that, or I can just put it back to 5 again, just for the example we had here earlier. So you see this I dot here command here is very nice because you don't have to generate the variables up front before you use it, and you can make really short work of your do files. So they become much shorter, much more efficient than before. So to go over it again, you could of course just use an I dot form. So you can say sum I dot rep 78. That's for the summary of this. We can also reg price on I dot rep 78. We can of course, like I mistakenly said earlier, if you just want 1 dummy for the 5, you can just say 5.rep78, or we can change the base group to be, in this case here, so we reg price and we say I base, so B for base, B5.rep78. So guys, that covers a total of 3 different ways to create and use dummy variables in Stata. I hope you enjoyed today's video. My name is Stefan Eriksson, and until next time. Thank you.